Hey everyone, Bill Parish here with GTT Audio, and welcome to the channel today. Well, today there's a couple of things I'd like to discuss, and sort of tying back into some things that we spoke about in the past. For example, in episode 22, I said it's the finished product, not the parts inside. You know, sort of let go of the biases that you have. And I just finished a demo on a pair of Key 3 speakers. We were the original ones that brought them into the US, and I just think the world of those speakers. They've moved on to a couple of different distributors by now, or since then. But we've always stayed on as a dealer because they are a absolutely phenomenal product, designed by Bruno Putzis. And you know I'm a huge fan of Bruno and the work that he's done. In any case, the Key 3s, if you don't know it, I'll pop one up on the screen here. It's a three-way speaker, uses a tweeter, a mid-range, and 4 woofers. You've got 2 side-firing woofers and 2 in the rear, and they use a cardioid bass array. Now, I might have used a word that, you guys are wondering, what's a cardioid bass array? Well, you can certainly look it up, but I'll tell you. And I'll tell you how it functions with the keys. First of all, you take that front wall behind the speakers in front of you, take that wall out of the equation. What it does is it wraps around the speaker. Because I'm talking to the camera. So if the rear firing woofers are facing me, it wraps around the speaker and comes forward. So it takes the bass and brings it forward. And one of the cool things about the Key is it does have a boundary switch. And with that boundary switch, you can dial in essentially your distance to that wall, to the wall that the rear woofers are firing. So there's 12 different settings, and that's how much output you want those rear speakers to have. And say 12, 12 different settings. If it were on 0, the speakers would be in freestanding space. And if it were on 12, the speakers would be jammed into the corners. So that's the that's the variations, and you can go anywhere in there. It's extremely easy to demo, and I love to have clients. And this client, I didn't even offer. He jumped up and did it himself. He got behind a speaker and he's like, "Oh my God, there's no sound." And at my house, with his conventional speakers, there's all this sound back there. And that's the whole thing. We always have people, kind of put your ear down there, and you can, depending on where it's dialed in, as far as that boundary switch, you can start back at the wall and you don't hear any bass. And as you move your ear closer to the speaker, you hear it. So, I mean, it works. That proves it works. It's 100% it works. But what the Key 3s do, they have DSP, is they have this, they build essentially a 2 meter by 2 meter wall. So if you've got the center of the speaker, it's 1 meter on each side of the speaker, and then it's 1 meter on top and below the speaker. And so it builds this, 6 foot 6 inch for the Americans and 2 meters for the rest of the world wall of sound, this big square of sound, and it brings it in front of where the speaker is pointing, and that's on each speaker. So it's extremely cool. So what the hell does this have to do with listening biases? Well, so what's the Key do? The Key's an all-in-one system. All what you need to do is add a source. So there's people that don't like active speakers. All right. The Key uses, I said 4 woofers, a mid-range, and a and a tweeter. So it has to use 6 amplifiers. And yes, 6 amplifiers and a single 18-inch by 18-inch by 8-inch speaker is going to be Class D. Encore, which Bruno developed. So it's got 6 Encore amplifiers in there. There's people that hate Class D for whatever reason. And I mean, granted, that all doesn't sound good, but not all Class A sounds good and not all Class AB sounds good. And then, you know, you got to have big cables. Well, it uses Cat 5. You know, it uses AES EBU protocol over network cables, over Cat 5, Cat 6, Cat 8, whatever you want to use, but over LAN cables, I guess is what I should say. You just add a source, and in this scenario, you know, and we display it with the key control. So you go, you know, directly in. You take a digital signal in from what we did was the Orlick Aries G2.1 running Roon, and it was just phenomenal. So again, what's it got to do with the biases besides what I already touched about? And it just, what made me think of, well, I got to add this to this video, is the fellow said when he was first, 3 years ago, he's flipping the pages, he probably saw my ad and says, what is this crap? You know, or, you know, he was just completely and utterly prejudiced against an all-in-one speaker, a speaker that's, you know, has its own amplifiers, has its own, you know, digital, it has 6 DACs. It has 6 DACs. It's got an A to D converter in it, you know, so he just prejudiced against all that, you know, a digital speaker, when really it is not a digital speaker. I mean, if the speakers are the cones, it's, you know, the signal flow on a digital input is, you know, it comes in digital, it goes through the DSP board, then goes through the DAC, digital to analog conversion, into each amplifier, and then right on out. You know, it's, for most of us, dyed in the wool audiophiles that have been in this for a long time. I mean, this is completely new. This can't work, but it actually does. I mean, Key has been a hugely successful company, and it's, you know, it's a great speaker. It's a great product, and you know, back on episode 22 when I said, you know, it's not the internal parts, but it's the sum, and that was the whole thing. I mean, this is a speaker system where, let's call it Bruno, it's the whole Key team, but Bruno chose the amplifiers, his amplifiers, but he didn't just take an off-the-shelf Encore amplifier. He rolled his own specific to that speaker and specific to the driver it was going to be driving. So it's custom built for that driver. The DACs are custom, the DSP is custom, the software is custom. Everything is custom for that particular system. You know, I can run a Mola Mola system, which is also a Bruno Putzi's design. I can run the DAC, I can run the preamp, I can run the amps, but I can't run the cables. He has no idea what cables I'm going to be using, even though they do use some Kabbalah Sosna cables internally, which I use, but it's made to work with everything, right? But is there some compromises when you work with everything? You know, I can run an AudioNet system. They don't know I'm driving YG or Von Schweikert speakers. You know, I think you see what I mean. So, you know, this guy got it. It took him a few years, he said, to get it. You know, now he put his money where his beliefs were, where his ears were, because he heard it and it was phenomenal, and yeah, it was good. Another thing that came up, well, you know, everybody that called me and emailed me with suggestions for the channel, thank you very much. I said I had, had a brain freeze and was looking for a topic, and I called Dick. Well, quite a few people emailed in and called in and offered some topics. In fact, one fella gave me 2 sheets worth of probably 50 or 60 topics. So we're good now. And that was just, I might have misspoke. I had topics. I just didn't know which one I was going to settle on. But anyway, but this comes from a good guy who said, Bill, I once, and I might have covered this in episode 14 and 15 with Joe Cabala, maybe touched on it, but I'm going to just tell you a story. He said, Bill, one time when I was over at his place, I said that with cables, the actual conductor itself probably makes the least amount of difference. And he said, but I hear the difference between silver and copper cables. And that's from the same manufacturer. Well, yes, I suppose, and no. And this also goes back to the biases, With Kabbalah Sosna, Joe always says, if they say, can you tell me what's in that cable? And he said, and he would say, no. Well, why? Why can't you tell me if it's copper or silver? He says, because I'd like you to listen to it, and you have biases. And if I tell you, then you're going to know what it sounds like before actually listening to it. And I think that makes perfect sense. And it does. Because we all do have biases. We have to learn to drop them, but we all have them. Just knowing where I'm going to go here, or I know where I'm going to go, but what I'm going to do first. So if there's a cable company out there, what is it? I think Maple Shade, Omega Micro Cables or something like that. Now I bring them up because they make a silver cable and they make a copper cable, and the only thing around it is, I believe it's rice paper. It almost looks like a plastic bag, but it's not plastic. I think it's some rice paper sheathing, and it's not touching much. They are ribbons. A ribbon is going to sound different than a solid core, which is going to sound different than a stranded. Okay, we know all that. That's all part of the recipe, but these are, one's silver, one's copper. So should they sound different? Yes, and they will, because everything else is equal. Everything else is equal. He's done nothing to that cable. He's essentially given you absolutely raw material and a raw piece of foil to listen to. So if you listen to that raw piece of foil, copper is going to sound different than silver, because different is different and the same is the same, right? So we have to think of that. That's revolutionary to some people, but it's something to keep in mind. So I just said that they sound the same, or that they sound different. So why do I say that the conductor doesn't make a difference? Well, it does make a difference, but it's the least important. It's the absolute least important. The people have certain biases. Silver sounds bright, copper sounds warm. Well, I used to be the importer of Karma, and they had silver cables, and it was an extremely warm cable, extremely warm. Then there's some other cables that I've tried that are copper, and they're extremely bright. So the prejudice, the bias, doesn't hold true. Joe Cabala, one time I was commenting about a particular cable I had heard, and he said, and something that was attractive about a sound, and he said, "Yeah, I know that sound, and we chose to go a different path, but we had that sound, and I think that what we had chose is the right path." And So, well, you got to come over and listen to this. So he did. And he said, are you around in 5 hours? I said, sure. 5 hours later, he shows up, and he's got this cable, an interconnect, one interconnect. And out of the interconnect are 6 or 8 different strands. I think there was 8 of them. Eight little wires. So he's obviously gone into the cable, removed the sheath, gone in there, soldered something up, and put these little pigtail extensions, and each one's got a little. There's 4 of them that have clips on them, or maybe all 8 of them had clips. I don't know. And he listened, and we listened, and he says, "Is this our cable?" I said, "Yep, sounds exactly like your cable." He said, "All right, pause that." Goes, changes a couple of things over there. Play it again. It's back when we were using CD players, but play it again. Played it again, and son of a gun, he had the sound of this other cable I was talking about. I'm like, what? He goes, hang on a second. Goes and changes it. Play it again. Completely, utterly different sound than the previous 2. Some more changes. He could change the sound of this cable indefinitely. It became completely obvious that what I was listening to was not the material. It was not the material of the cable I was listening to. It was the construction. It was the recipe. It was the sum of all the parts configured in a particular way. It's the sheathing. It's the dielectric. It's the drain wires. It's the shield. Did I say the shielding? Yeah, sheathing is maybe what I meant to say. So sheathing, and then there's shielding. And here's someone calling in. Let's try to. Anyway, so it's all this different stuff that makes the sound. It has nothing to do with that. From that exercise, when you have a well-engineered cable like theirs is, when and they have a patent on it, that the whole patent is about shielding and drains and preventing any type of noise from getting in. And I think that's why they're so quiet, why they have such a low noise floor, and why they have such high resolution, and they're so dynamic, is because no noise gets into that cable. Everything, there's so much surrounding it and so much stuff going on inside what looks like a pretty basic cable on the outside. There's so much going on inside there that there's no way that outside influences can get to those conductors, and they can make those conductors sound exactly the way they want by different twists or different how different cables are twisted around the cable. I don't know this, but maybe one's run straight and then there's one that's turned this way. Maybe there's certain, and how he can change the connections at the end can make them sound entirely different. So the fellow that called me and asked me about this, I hope you get it now. I hope it sheds some light on this. But if you have, say, cable company A that offers both silver and copper cables, most likely what they're first of all, they don't believe in anything. They just want to sell you product. They want to be everything to everybody. Otherwise, take a stance and do some true engineering. But if they're doing that, then they're going to play into the biases. So if it's a single company that is offering, here's our copper line, here's our silver line, then they're playing into the biases. And chances are that they really don't have any convictions or trying to really produce anything that's pure and natural. And they're not taking a stance. They're just, like I said, they want to be everything to everybody. And, I'm probably going to get some thumbs down on this video for saying this stuff, but it's the truth. How about some of these companies, take a stand. Have some convictions. What is the purpose of being in business? I don't know. I know I look around this room and I see Kabbalah Sosna, I see Kronos, I see AudioNet, Mola, Orlick, YG, JL Audio, Rune. These people are all, it's funny, all these manufacturers are sort of going down the same path as well. And all these manufacturers have sort of done what they say you have to do to design a component differently. Mola is, their DAC is completely different than anyone else, AudioNet does things differently. Certainly Kronos does things differently. They all have, it's interesting, so does YG. And as I look around, I'm sitting there thinking each and every one of these companies have patents and trademarks on their technology. They've really done something different. They're just not a run-of-the-mill trying to recreate something that somebody else has already done. Well, I don't know. I didn't, I kind of think this was an interesting program. I hope you guys did as well. We covered a couple of things. And I don't rehearse this stuff, so I didn't know exactly where I would go on this. We'd like you to subscribe, like, share, comment below, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.